Join me to paint a vintage window with watercolors. We will use a fun technique to paint the trees and potted plants that I think you will really enjoy. I stick the masking tape in a rectangle shape as you see in the video. Then I mix ultramarine with burnt umber to get a bluish gray which I use to paint the wall. Now tilt the board so that the excess pigment gets collected near the masking tape and then wipe it off with a cloth. Next, while the paper is still wet, I use burnt umber to paint the ground level near the wall. I mix ultramarine with burnt umber to get a bluish grey shade which I use to paint the ground level for a darker tone. After the paper is completely dry, I carefully remove the masking tape that was used for the window. Next, I mix ultramarine with burnt umber to create a bluish grey shade, and using a light value of this mix, I paint the first layer of the window. As I paint, you may notice that I leave some white space around the edges of the window. After painting the first layer with light value of bluish grey, I allowed it to dry completely. Then using the same pigment, I paint a rectangle shape as in the video. The rectangle shape is the window and the area around it is the windowsill. Inside that rectangle, I paint it from dark to light, moving from left to right. The darkest area represents where the shadow falls on the window, and the lightest value indicates where the light source hit the surface. By doing this, we create a sense of depth and dimension in our painting. After painting the second layer with a gradient from left to right using bluish gray, we will add some stripes to the window using burnt umber while the paint is still wet. Since we are using the wet on wet technique, use a thick consistency of burnt umber to paint the stripes on the wet surface. After painting the window and allowing it to dry completely, we will move on to the windowsill. Using the bluish gray mixed with more ultramarine, I paint the shadow on the windowsill from left to right as shown in the video. You can see how the shadow gradually fades from dark to light as it reaches the right side of the windowsill. After painting the window, we move on to the fun part of the painting process. I start by applying cadmium yellow and lemon yellow at the top, sap green in the middle, and ultramarine at the bottom for the tree, all on a piece of cling film. Then I flip the film onto the watercolor paper, allowing the paint to create its own interesting texture. As the crown of the tree is sparse, I am going to repeat the same process with the cling film and flip it over on the same area of the watercolor paper to make the tree crown denser. Next, using burnt umber, I paint the trunk of the tree, and with the bluish gray mix on my palette, I paint the shadowed part of the tree. To create a balanced structure for the tree, I add some foliage using my brush. By mixing cadmium yellow with cadmium red, you get an orange, which we will use to paint the pots. We are going to paint two different pots. One is bucket shaped and the other is in elongated oval shape. While these spots are still wet, I add shadows to these spots using burnt umber. Next, we are going to paint the cast shadow of the tree on the wall. For this, I use a light value of the mix of burnt umber with equal amount of ultramarine. Next, we are going to use the same cling film technique to paint the potted plants. For this, the pots should be completely dry. The last step is to paint the cast shadow of the potted plants. For this, I'm using the same gray pigment, which is a mix of ultramarine with equal amount of burnt umber. We have reached the end of this painting process. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more watercolor painting tutorials. See you in the next video. Until then, take care and bye bye from Prema.